Hey guys, tonight we slip into wooden sandals and shuffle through the hush of old Kyoto. The street outside Yorokiya, the traditional geisha house, is still cloaked in velvet pre-dawn darkness. You're wrapped in layers of patterned silk, the scent of incense lingering from last night's guests. You hear nothing but the soft creak of paper sliding doors and the distant clack of someone else's getter echoing off stone. You're young, too young for the weight of expectation you carry, and today, like every day, is about embodying a tradition older than most of the buildings surrounding you. You probably won't survive this with your lower back intact, honestly, but it's beautiful in a quiet, exhausting kind of way. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time it is for you in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up inside a centuries-old house. It's mostly wood and whispers. The tatami mats creak under your body as you rise already stiff from the block you sleep on to protect your hairstyle. The air smells of cedar and sweet rice vinegar. You pad toward the washing basin, careful not to rouse the elder geisha sleeping in the room next door. She spent years perfecting her silence. The okiya's walls are paper thin, not metaphorically, but literally. You can hear the city starting to stretch and yawn outside the occasional rooster, the first rattle of a delivery cart. But inside, it's ritual time. You kneel beside the hearth, eyes still heavy, and begin your morning cleaning duties. You'll scrub the floors with a cloth, not a mop. Your sleeves are tied back, your feet bare, your motions slow. In the kitchen, breakfast is prepared by the house mother, or oka-san. She isn't your real mother, of course, but she's the one who controls your schedule, your training, your debt. Yes, you're in debt. Even before you serve your first client. Your kimono? Borrowed. The room? Rented. The training, the hairpins, the meals, they're all added to your ledger. Historians still argue whether this system was empowering or exploitative. Maybe both. But you're not thinking about that now. You're too busy polishing the wood around the entrance, so guests will see their own reflection when they step inside. Your day begins long before the world outside opens its shutters. You stretch in the courtyard garden under a blooming cherry tree. Yes, there's really a blooming cherry tree, because of course there is. The petals fall like slow confetti while your teacher drills you on how to bow again. Yes, there's a right and wrong way to bow, and no, you haven't quite nailed it yet. There's no time for breakfast. A small rice ball is slipped into your sleeve pocket for later. You're ushered into a tiny tatami room with mirrored walls and no escape. This is where you'll learn posture, poise, and performance. You'll repeat one footstep over and over again until your toes cry out for mercy and your back muscles spasm like they're auditioning for kabuki. The older geisha glide by sometimes, their presence both awe-inspiring and terrifying. One corrects your wrist angle with a flick of her fan. Another whispers about your hair being slightly off-center. You bow again, apologize again, and promise to do better tomorrow. You'll live this way for years. The okiya owns your time, your schedule, and your dreams. You'll eat when you're told, rest when allowed, and never speak out of turn. If you're lucky, one day you'll graduate to geiko, the full-fledged geisha. But for now, you are a maiko, an apprentice balancing on the delicate edge between girlhood and legend. And yes, your feet already hurt. You're still sore from yesterday, and the day before that. But it doesn't matter, because you're only a maiko, the bottom rung on the geisha ladder. And today is just another long day in the slow-motion ballet that is your life. At your age about 15, you're already considered late to start, especially by the oka-san, who eyes your progress with a faint, pursed-lip disapproval that says try harder without saying anything at all. Training begins early and ends late. You spend the day folded into positions no modern spine should tolerate, wearing layers that weigh nearly as much as a small dog. You're learning tea ceremony, yes, that tea ceremony, the one with 37 steps before anyone even sips. If you pour too fast, you're scolded. Too slow, scolded. Wrong wrist tilt, you guessed it, scolded. Your mentor today is an older geiko with the kind of grace that makes you feel like a drunk duck. She glides across the tatami, her silk kimono barely whispering against the floor. Meanwhile, you trip over your hem again and knock over a tea scoop. the room doesn't laugh. It just waits for you to fix it. They tell you to observe everything: how she holds the tea whisk, how she turns the cup, how she folds the cloth. It's not about learning, it's about becoming. There's a difference, apparently. Outside, your peers are probably riding bicycles or doing teenage things like sneaking sweets into school lockers. You, however, are practicing shamisen until your fingers bleed slightly, just slightly. You don't mention it. Bleeding is part of the elegance. Historians still argue whether Maiko life was more about empowerment or confinement. Some say the rigorous training built confidence, agency, and skill. Others liken it to soft imprisonment, with hairpins and polite nodding. Meanwhile, you're still struggling to remember the correct hand placement for the bow you've already done 72 times. At some point in the afternoon, you're allowed a quick break. You sit on the veranda, sip green tea, and try not to let your spine collapse like a flan in a cupboard. A neighbor cat strolls along the roof tiles. He stares at you with the judgment of someone who knows you've dropped a fan mid-dance before. Then it's time for more music, and calligraphy, and flower arranging. And that's before your etiquette class, where you're literally taught how to walk through a doorway without embarrassing yourself. Yes, that's a real class. Your feet are sore from the weight of the Okobo sandals, those 6-inch tall wooden bricks that make every step a physics experiment. You've fallen in them twice. You're not supposed to fall, ever. You wrap the evening with a lesson in small talk, which isn't just conversation, it's an art form. The goal is to seem interested, mysterious, witty, but never vulgar. You practice laughing softly at bad jokes and saying, "Oh my, really?" with 9 different inflections. It's exhausting being a living doll of culture. At dinner, you sit with the other Maiko and eat in silence. Talking is discouraged unless spoken to. The food is elegant but portioned for hummingbirds. You sneak a second rice ball from your sleeve and eat it under the table, hoping the house cat takes the fall if anyone hears you chew. Later, in the bathhouse, your muscles finally relax. You scrub away the layers of training, dust, and sweat, and maybe, just maybe, one mistake. The hot water stings your palms, but it's the closest you get to peace today. You climb into your futon and lie on your wooden neck pillow, staring up at the low ceiling beams. Your hair is still perfect. Your thoughts are tired. Your future is unwritten. But one thing is clear. You will rise again tomorrow, and you'll keep practicing until your bow, your smile, and your silence are all indistinguishable from perfection. Morning again. The same creak in your knees. The same quiet shuffle to the dressing room. Today you're learning what it truly means to wear your worth. Because in this world, your clothing isn't just fashion, it's status, ceremony, identity. And your kimono? It's a wearable thesis in ancient Japanese symbolism, social cues, and frankly, sore shoulders. It begins with the layers. Oh, so many layers. First, a soft white undergarment tied tight. Then the nagajuba, a silk slip that already feels fancy enough to stop at. But no, that's just the warm-up. Next comes the actual kimono. It's an explosion of pattern and color, chosen specifically for the season. If it's spring, you might have cherry blossoms. Autumn? Maple leaves. And not just any maple leaves. They have to be the right size, hue, and placement. Because heaven forbid your sleeve design implies summer when it's clearly plum blossom season. The kimono is heavy. You're basically swaddled like a silk burrito. Then comes the obi, the thick, stiff sash that wraps around your middle like a stylish corset and gets knotted at the back in a configuration so complex it could probably unlock a secret shrine if rotated correctly. By the time it's on, your arms can't quite move freely. Which is fine, because you're not expected to flail. You're supposed to glide, stand, pour tea, not chase down a bus. 2 older women assist you in dressing. Not because you're spoiled, but because there is no way to do this yourself without dislocating at least one shoulder. They pull, tuck, adjust. One clucks her tongue when she notices your collar angle is off by a fraction of a degree. Sloppy collar, sloppy life, she says. Probably not a real proverb, but you get the message. Historians still argue whether the obsession with proper kimono arrangement was a reflection of artistry or control. Some say it was empowering, transforming women into revered figures of tradition. Others view it as a textile straitjacket designed to maintain a strict social hierarchy. But here you are, standing still for nearly an hour while they adjust a sleeve crease. When it's finally done, you're weighed down and polished up, resembling a moving piece of art. A very fragile, extremely expensive, and marginally itchy piece of art. You shuffle to the mirror, neck extended slightly to emphasize grace. Your feet feel like soft bricks inside your tabby socks. You nod. You're ready. Sort of. You take a few test steps. The Okubo sandals make a hollow clop with each movement, echoing down the corridor. You try not to trip. You nearly trip. One of the older assistants sighs. But you make it. Barely. You take a moment to admire the details in the fabric-embroidered cranes, flying across a silk sky, gold thread, glinting, just so in the morning light. It's gorgeous. It's heavy. It's yours, for the day at least. Your hair is the next ordeal. Though you slept on a wooden block all night to preserve yesterday's elaborate style, a few wisps dared to escape. So you return to the hairdresser, another stern elder with surprisingly strong hands. She smooths everything back into place, slides in lacquered combs, and secures kanzashi ornaments that gently sway when you walk. You wonder how you'd look bald. Easier, probably. Less maintenance. The final touch is perfumed sandalwood, yuzu, a hint of smoke. Just enough to linger when you pass, never enough to overwhelm. Everything about your appearance is designed to suggest, not shout. You leave the room with the grace of a swan trained in etiquette school. Your sleeves trail behind like soft wings, your step measured, your face calm. Inside, you're sweating slightly. But you don't let it show, because now you are dressed. And being dressed, in this world, is half the performance. The dressing is done, the silk has been smoothed. Your sleeves are flowing just so, and your obi is knotted like a silent declaration of elegance. Now it's time for the face, your mask of perfection. You kneel on a low stool in front of the vanity, and the transformation begins. The white paste oshiroi is cold as it touches your skin. It's made from rice powder, mixed with just enough water to resemble creamy paint. And yes, technically it clogs your pores like a polite cement. But this is beauty, not comfort. A thin brush applies it carefully around your face, down your neck, and oddly leaving a W-shaped bare patch on the nape. That patch? It's considered erotic. Apparently, the back of your neck is the zone of allure in this universe. Who knew? Your eyebrows are redrawn higher and thinner. Your lips? Only partially painted, just the center, shaped like a flower bud. Why? To appear more youthful. You're basically giving Disney princess energy. 17th century edition. Historians still argue whether this makeup style was purely aesthetic or deeply symbolic. Some say it reflected a longing for divine purity, echoing no theatre masks and religious ceremony. Others believe it was about control, refining women into icons that matched male ideals of elegance. As for you, you're trying not to sneeze as the powder settles in your nose. The red around your eyes is applied next. It's not supposed to look natural. That's the point. You're becoming a living painting, a bridge between this world and the idealized world of art. You are not meant to blend in. You are meant to glow, silently, in dim lantern light. Then come the fine lines, the delicate contours. The top lip is made smaller, the bottom fuller. Everything is about balance, perfection, silence. The irony? You aren't even allowed to speak until your makeup is complete. Once done, you bow in thanks to the makeup artist, though your neck is stiff from holding still. You turn your head slowly to admire your reflection. The transformation is startling. The girl from the morning has vanished. In her place stands something quieter, smoother, made of paint and ritual. You're not ugly. You're unreal. Your movements now feel calculated. You rise slowly, sleeves fluttering. Each step is practiced. You're hyper-aware of your expression. A twitch, a smirk, even an accidental blink can disturb the illusion. As you walk to the front hall of the Okiya, a senior geiko passes and murmurs a quiet compliment about your lips. That, you've learned, is high praise. It means you're learning the invisible rules, the ones that aren't taught but are expected. Before you leave, you check yourself once more in the small wall mirror near the door. Not out of vanity, but duty. A loose hair, a powder smudge, or heaven forbid a crooked obi, would not just embarrass you, it would reflect poorly on your entire house. Then you slip into your okobo and prepare to glide out into the city. Your face is perfect. Your body is stiff. Your spirit? Somewhere between excited and exhausted. And the best part? This was just getting ready. Now that you're dressed, powdered, and poised, you head out for what most would call dance class. But let's be clear, it's not Zumba. This is traditional Japanese dance training, and it's not just hard. It's geometrically precise, soul-bending, toe-cramping, emotion-repressing hard. You enter the dim practice studio and bow at the threshold. Yes, even the floor deserves respect in this world. The room is bare but intimidating tatami mats, sliding doors, a single mirror framed in old pine, and your teacher already waiting, fan in hand. She's been dancing since the shogunate was in diapers, or at least it feels that way. She doesn't greet you. She nods once. That's plenty. You begin your warm-up, though the word warm feels like an overpromise. There's no music yet, just the sound of your own feet sliding, the quiet click of your fan, and the occasional correction muttered like a spell. Wrist too stiff, eyes softer, back straight, no, straighter. Dance, for a Maiko, is not about letting loose. There's no freestyle here. Every move is scripted down to the angle of your pinky finger. Even your blinking should look intentional. You repeat a single arm motion slowly, raising a fan and turning your wrist dozens of times until it feels like your shoulder is rotating off the hinge. Then you do it some more. Today's lesson is the Gion Kobu Kyorinkai version of the snow. It's a classic. You glide forward 3 steps, fan out, then retreat 2 steps, bow, and freeze like a snowflake falling in reverse. Historians still argue whether these traditional dances began as sacred rituals or sophisticated performance art. Some trace them to ancient shrine ceremonies. Others say they evolved from kabuki theater and odori performances meant purely to entertain. Either way, you're too busy focusing on keeping your feet aligned to weigh in. Your fan is your partner. It never leaves your side. It opens with a flick, closes with a snap, and sometimes conveys more emotion than your entire face is allowed to show. A tilted fan might mean shyness. A half-open one? Invitation. A full circle sweep? Rejection, drama, or maybe seasonal melancholy. Your teacher explains this without explaining it. You're just expected to feel it. You glance at the mirror. Your reflection doesn't look like you. It looks like the ghost of a poem, soft, precise, unreachable. And then it happens. You make a mistake. You forget the 3rd foot pivot and turn your body slightly too fast. The fan dips out of alignment and your teacher pauses. No yelling, just silence. Somehow, that's worse. She walks over, adjusts your wrist and says, "Snow doesn't rush." You nod. You repeat the motion. Again and again. You don't stop until your legs begin to tremble and your forehead beads with sweat carefully blotted so as not to smudge your makeup. You keep your composure, even though your calves are quietly planning a rebellion. After 2 hours, the lesson ends. You bow deeply. Your fan folds closed with a click. Your knees crack as you rise. You walk out of the room with elegance. But inside, your muscles are screaming like a jazz band on fire. As you leave, you pass a young Maiko in training, watching from the doorway. She bows to you, eyes wide. She thinks you look like magic. You smile, just barely, because magic hurts. Your legs feel like noodles and your fan hand is starting to cramp, but there's no time to recover. Because now, it's time to master a different kind of performance, the kind that uses no voice, no dance, no words at all, only a fan. Yes, an actual folding fan. Your new best friend, worst critic, and secret weapon. Today's lesson is in kuchikomi, the unspoken language of gestures. And while the dance hall might leave you sweating, this class leaves you thinking harder than any exam you've ever taken. Because in the geisha world, how you hold a fan can tell someone everything they need to know, or nothing at all. The lesson begins in silence. The teacher lays out 3 fans, each a different size and design. One is simple and ivory with gold edges. Another is painted with red chrysanthemums. The third glimmers with tiny cranes in mid-flight. She picks up the plain one. "This," she says, "is for refusal." She demonstrates a soft wave in front of the chest, eyes downcast. No words. Just a clear, "No thank you, good sir." a polite barrier between you and, let's call him Lord Awkward, who has asked for a dance after one too many cups of sake. Next fan, the red one. She flicks it open and gently taps it against her cheek while making the smallest smile. This, she murmurs, says, I'm listening, but I'm not impressed yet. You try it. Too slow, you repeat. Too fast, you try again. Acceptable. Barely. The final fan, with the flying cranes, is used for rare moments. You hold it just so, slightly off-center, and use it to veil a laugh, a whisper, or a glance. The teacher watches you closely as you practice hiding a smile behind it, not too wide, not too sharp. Use it to let them wonder, she says. You don't need to speak. Your silence is more powerful. Historians still argue about the origins of fan language. Some suggest it evolved naturally in tea houses where conversation was restricted. Others think it was passed down deliberately, encoded within performance traditions. And a few fringe types admittedly believe it dates back to samurai courtesans who used fans not just to flirt but to deliver coded messages. You try not to stab yourself in the eye while practicing a flirtatious tilt. The fan becomes an extension of you. You twirl it slowly when deep in thought, flutter it quickly when feigning surprise. You hide behind it, invite with it, even close a conversation by simply folding it shut and bowing. It's everything a smartphone is today, but quieter and more judgmental. And yes, you're still expected to dance with the fan too. In one choreography lesson, you use it to mimic falling leaves. Another, you trace the path of moonlight over water. You begin to notice that each movement carries layers of meaning, just like the kimono, the hairpins, the silence. You're no longer just learning how to use a fan. You're learning how to speak without ever opening your mouth. Later that evening, during a mock tea event with visiting patrons, played today by Elder Gecko and one bored-looking house cat, you're instructed to use your fans in a casual setting. You keep your voice soft, your posture straight, and your fan ready. One of the elders raises an eyebrow at your slightly too eager flick. Try again, she says. This isn't kabuki. You're not trying to signal a pirate ship. You blush. The fan trembles slightly in your hand. The cat yawns. But by the third try, you find it. The flow, the rhythm, the restraint. You make eye contact with one of the mock guests. Let your fan drift across your lap in a practiced arc and feel something settle inside you. Power not in volume or force, but in elegance. You may not be allowed to speak freely. But with this little fan, you're fluent in mystery. It's nearly dusk, which means it's time for what outsiders might think is the highlight of your day, the dinner banquet. You would think so, wouldn't you? Delicious food, pretty clothes, soft music. But here's the truth. You don't eat the food. You serve it. You don't enjoy the party. You are the party. Tonight's setting is an ochaya, a traditional tea house where guests, usually powerful businessmen or aging patrons of the arts, come for refined entertainment. Not that kind of entertainment. Despite centuries of confusion, geisha are not courtesans. You're here to provide art, wit, conversation, and grace, not romance. You arrive early to prepare. The room smells of tatami, incense, and expensive indecision. You arrange the cups just so, fold the napkins like little mountains, and double-check the lanterns for that perfect low light that softens everyone's features, including yours. Your Oka-san gives you a final once-over. Kimono flawless, makeup intact, fan in place. Then she nods. Showtime. Guests begin to arrive. You bow so many times your spine starts negotiating better working conditions. The men are older, mostly, and wear tailored suits. They laugh too loud at each other's jokes and glance sideways when you glide by. One calls you elegant, another calls you delicate, which is his polite way of flirting while holding a sake cup. You sit beside one of them, pour his drink, and offer a compliment on his haori, a traditional jacket. He beams. You don't mention that you've complimented the same jacket 17 times in your career. That's not the point. You're here to make him feel seen. Historians still debate whether these evenings were genuine artistic performances or social theatre for the elite. Some say geisha were preservers of intangible culture. Others argue it was simply emotional labor wrapped in silk. Either way, you're working hard. And you're hungry. There's a full-course meal being served, grilled fish, miso soup, pickled vegetables, seasonal fruits all arranged like edible artwork. But you're not part of the guest list. You smile, you refill sake cups, and you nod appreciatively when someone says something mildly insightful about moonlight or politics. You keep your own appetite tucked behind your fan. At one point, a patron tries to test your poise with an off-color joke. You laugh, not too loud, not too forced, just enough to deflect and move on. Your fan flutters. The room resets. Behind the scenes, another geiko plays the shamisen. Her fingers dance across the strings, filling the air with soft, nostalgic melodies. You've practiced those songs before your fingers still carry the memory of their calluses. Then comes your turn to dance. You stand, the room hushes. You step into the center space and begin. The music leads. Your sleeves follow. Your body tells the story of falling leaves, of distant lovers, of quiet longing. You don't need words. The men lean forward, captivated. They see beauty. They don't see the blisters in your okubo sandals. You finish with a bow. The room applauds. The patrons smile warmly, already back to their sake. You return to your spot, refill their cups, and wait for the next cue. Eventually, the evening ends. One guest leaves a generous tip. Another forgets your name. It doesn't matter. You walk them out, bow deeply, and retreat into the quiet of the back corridor. Only then do you eat quick bites of rice and pickles in the kitchen, shared with the other geiko and the staff. You laugh about the man who mistook his chopsticks for a brush and tried to paint soy sauce onto a rice cracker. Later, back at the okiya, you slip out of your kimono and sigh with relief. The makeup comes off slowly. Your face returns. The mirror fogs with steam. You're no longer a symbol. Just you again. And still, somehow, glowing. The banquet is over. Your smile muscles are sore, and your sleeves smell faintly of incense and grilled eel. It's nearly midnight, but your day is far from done. Now comes the quietest part of the performance, the walk home. You step into the alley behind the ochaya, your okobo clacking softly on the stone path. Kyoto at night is a different world. The air is cool, almost crisp. Paper lanterns sway gently above doorways, casting golden halos over rain-dark wood. You pass by narrow storefronts now closed, their Noran curtains pulled aside like eyelids asleep. There's a certain magic to this time. The streets are nearly empty except for the occasional cat or tipsy merchant stumbling home. You walk slowly, not because you're tired, although yes, you absolutely are, but because you're expected to. Geisha do not hurry, even when they desperately want to soak their feet in hot water and fall into a futon face first. There's a rhythm to your steps. Clop, clop, clop. Your shadow moves beside you, elongated and dramatic. You keep your back straight, your head slightly tilted, your fan tucked neatly in one hand. If anyone were watching, and sometimes they are, they'd see grace, mystery, and serenity. What they wouldn't see, the itch on your shoulder blade. You can't reach it. You must endure. You pass a man smoking under a sakura tree. He bows low. You bow lower. He whispers, "Otsukare-sama desu." Thank you for your hard work. And for once, someone means it. Historians still argue about these nightly walks. Some believe they were an extension of the performance, a way to allow patrons one last glimpse of fleeting beauty. Others say they were simply the most discreet way home in a society where visibility was both prestige and pressure. Either way, they've become part of your ritual. You know every crack in this path. You could walk it blindfolded. But tonight, you let yourself notice things. The way moonlight hits the old stone, the damp scent of moss, the way the lanterns paint everything in sepia. Sometimes you pass another geiko walking home too. You nod silently, like monks crossing paths. No words, just shared exhaustion, wrapped in embroidered silk. Back at the okiya, the house is quiet. You slide open the door and step inside. Your okubo come off with a sigh. You tiptoe across the tatami, careful not to disturb the elder geisha sleeping in the adjoining room. You hear her breathing a gentle, rhythmic sound and wonder how many years she's been doing this. Probably more than you've been alive. You make your way to the washing basin. Cold water splashes your face. You remove the white makeup slowly, layer by layer. The girl beneath the mask returns, gradually cheeks flushed, eyes tired, lips chapped from too much smiling. The mirror shows you two faces: the painted ghost you were an hour ago, and the barely recognizable young woman blinking back now. You lean in and whisper to yourself, just a few more years. Then maybe you don't finish the thought. It's late. You brush out your hair, gently careful not to disturb the shape too much. You still have to sleep with your neck on that lacquered wooden block, which, by the way, is as comfortable as it sounds. You fluff your futon, kneel beside it, and bow once out of habit. Then you slide in, spine straight, hair perfect, face bare. Outside, a wind chime tinkles softly. Inside, your breathing slows. Tomorrow it begins again. More lessons, more smiles, more silent conversations, and precise bows. But for now, there's only the quiet of midnight Kyoto, and the ghostly image of yourself floating in the mirror, half dream, half girl. The day starts again before the sun has the decency to appear. Your limbs ache, your shoulders feel like they've been carrying history itself, which, in a way, they have, and yet, as always, you rise. This morning is quieter than usual. You slip out of your futon and pad across the tatami, balancing perfectly to avoid the squeaky floorboard just outside the elder Geiko's room. You dress in your practice kimono, simpler, lighter, a temporary reprieve from your formal silk armor, and head for the morning tea ceremony class. Today, you're not learning steps or fan flicks. You're learning silence. Again. In Geisha training, the tea ceremony is its own universe. You kneel in front of the scroll alcove, bow to the tools as if greeting tiny elders, and begin. The movements are small, controlled. Everything from the way you lift the bamboo ladle to how you fold the chekin cloth must follow strict order. It's like performing a sacred ritual for ghosts. No audience, no applause, just discipline. Historians still argue whether the tea ceremony originated as a Zen practice or a way for samurai to show off their taste in ceramics. Some say it was meditative, others political, but most agree it's now an art of being present utterly and entirely. You breathe, you pour, you whisk. The tea froths just enough. You rotate the cup precisely before offering it. Your sensei nods once you're only praised today. It's equivalent to getting a standing ovation. After tea class, you retreat to the garden courtyard with the other Maiko. You sit beneath the turning maple leaves, sipping leftover matcha and letting your knees recover from kneeling. The conversation is soft, cautious. No gossip, no whining. Just quiet comparisons of toe blisters and how many times someone dropped a fan this week. One girl confesses she cried during hairstyling yesterday. You nod in solidarity. We've all been there, you think. You once wept silently into your own collar while being poked with a comb shaped like a dragon. Soon enough, you're summoned again, this time for calligraphy. You sit on the floor, brush in hand, staring at a single sheet of rice paper. You must write the character for patience. It seems appropriate. Your brush wobbles at first, your fingers are still sore from shamisen class, but eventually the strokes even out. Your teacher hovers. Your lines are too loud, she murmurs. You blink. What does that even mean? You try again, quieter this time. By midday, your training wraps up barely. You have just enough time to eat a small lunch, which consists of pickled vegetables, a ball of rice, and miso soup. It's not glamorous, but you're grateful. You eat slowly, methodically. Even meals are a kind of practice. Later in the afternoon, you assist the elder Geiko in preparing for a seasonal festival. That means more kimono wrangling, comb polishing, and folding silk until your fingers go numb. But it's also where you hear stories, real ones, whispered softly between wardrobe changes. Did you know, one elder tells you, that back in the 1802 geisha were sometimes bodyguards? Carried knives in their sleeves. You raise an eyebrow. She smirks. Historians still debate that, she adds. But I like the idea, don't you? You nod. You do like the idea. A little steel behind all this silk. The sun begins to lower. The sky turns golden pink, casting long shadows across the tatami. You glance out the window at the empty street beyond, and wonder just for a second what your life might have been like had you chosen something else, something less, layered. But then someone calls your name, and you rise. There's work to do, guests to host, silk to wear, tea to pour. Because in this life, your name may be quiet, but your presence echoes. Back in the dressing room, you prepare once more for the evening. But tonight feels different. There's a tension in the air, a whisper of anticipation that clings to the sleeves of your kimono like static. Maybe it's the seasonal festival drawing near. Maybe it's the presence of a particularly important guest on tonight's schedule. Or maybe it's just the weather. Kyoto tends to hum with quiet drama when the clouds get low. You sit still as your hair is adjusted, not restyled, just corrected. You've learned by now that a single pin can mean the difference between elegance and embarrassment. The lacquer combs click softly as they're repositioned. The kanzashi ornaments sway like wind chimes. And yes, you still flinch every time one brushes your ear. Your kimono tonight is deep navy, embroidered with subtle chrysanthemums, perfect for early autumn. The obi features a silver crane. It takes 2 women nearly half an hour to get it all right. You don't complain. You stopped complaining sometime last spring. Once dressed, you sit on a cushion in the corner of the room and wait for your name to be called. This is perhaps the hardest part of all. The waiting. Sitting perfectly still, perfectly aware of every wrinkle, every movement, every sound. Finally, the door slides open. Your name is spoken softly, and you rise, glide, and bow all in one motion that took months to master. You step out into the hallway and make your way to the front of the house. The client tonight is a powerful businessman. New money, based on his accent and 2 shiny shoes. You're to entertain him and his colleagues alongside 2 senior Geico and a fellow Maiko. The 4 of you have been paired deliberately, one for conversation, one for music, one for dance, and one for quiet beauty. You're the dancer tonight. Lucky you. The ochaya is grander than usual. Golden screens line the walls. The paper lanterns are imported from Gifu. The guests sit on cushions embroidered with their company's crest, sipping sake that probably costs more than your entire kimono ensemble. You bow, again. Then you kneel beside the shamisen player and wait for your cue. When it comes, you stand, take position, and begin your performance. A seasonal dance titled Koyo no Mai, or Dance of the Autumn Leaves. You let your arms drift like wind through branches, your sleeves mimicking falling foliage. Your eyes stay low, your expression serene. Inside, your thighs are on fire. One guest whispers something in English. Another chuckles. You don't flinch. You complete the dance, bow, and resume your kneeling position without missing a beat. Historians still argue whether geisha performances were seen as true art by their audiences or simply expected traditions. Some claim it was the only refined entertainment available to the wealthy in pre-modern Japan. Others argue the performances were simply there to lubricate business deals, elegant distractions, nothing more. You wonder about that sometimes. Not too much. It doesn't change your movements. Later, during conversation, you're assigned to the quietest guest, the one who smiles politely but says little. You offer him a second cup of sake. He accepts. You compliment his watch, not because you care about watches, but because the movement of offering praise is what keeps the room balanced. He asks you gently if the life of a geisha is difficult. You pause. This is a trick question. Too honest, and it might make him uncomfortable. Too polite, and you risk seeming insincere. So, you smile behind your fan and reply, "It's only difficult if you think too much." He laughs. The others laugh too. The tension breaks. You've done your job. As the evening winds down, you and the other geisha perform a soft, wordless song. The shamisen hums like a lullaby. The guests sway slightly with the rhythm. For a moment, it feels like floating. Later, as you walk back through the alleyways, lanterns swaying in the breeze, you realize something strange. You're no longer just performing the role of a geisha. You are one. Not pretending, not learning, not waiting. You've become the thing itself. The realization is quiet, but deep, like a stone dropped into a still pond. You adjust your obi slightly and smile to yourself. You've been in the game long enough now to recognize the regulars, the ones who return, season after season, event after event. Some are kind, some are clever, and some carry power, like perfume. Tonight's client is one of those. He enters the ochaya flanked by junior executives, the way a general might stroll into camp with a row of fresh-faced lieutenants. He's older, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit with gold cufflinks and a knowing smirk. When he bows, you bow lower. When he speaks, you smile. He likes to test people, especially geisha. You've heard about him before. Rumors swirl through the Okia like steam from a teacup. Some say he once sponsored a Maiko through her entire apprenticeship. Others whisper he's ruined more than one with a careless word. He requests you by name tonight. You're placed beside him, tasked with refilling his cup, laughing at his jokes, and making him feel like he's the only man who's ever mattered under the warm glow of lantern light. Easy. He leans in and says, "You're too graceful to be so quiet." You reply with a tilt of your fan, concealing your smile just long enough to let him fill in the silence. It's not flirtation. It's control. You've learned by now, the less you say, the more they project. He asks if you enjoy this life. You reply with a gentle, practiced phrase, "Every night brings new stories." It's vague. It's poetic. It's exactly what he wants to hear. Historians still debate the power dynamic between geisha and their patrons. Some argue that geisha held more influence than they let on, often guiding conversations, business alliances, even social policy. Others believe they were simply ornaments in a male-dominated room's satin distractions. But in moments like this, as you pour sake with precision and steer the tone of the evening with a mere shift in posture, you feel the power humming beneath the surface. Later, one of the junior guests, likely emboldened by too much drink, leans toward you and jokes about how many geisha it takes to charm a banker. It's meant to be funny. It isn't. But you laugh softly anyway, redirecting the moment, shifting attention with a question about the harvest festival. You've learned that your greatest weapon isn't beauty or dance or song. It's the ability to guide a room without anyone noticing your hand on the rudder. After the performance, the patron lingers. He hints at wanting to see you again, privately. The request is polite, polished, cloaked in plausible deniability. You bow deeply and say, "If fate allows," a phrase that means everything and nothing. You return to the Okia that night and find the other geiko already undressing. One of them raises an eyebrow when she hears who your guest was. You just shrug and begin untying your obi. Later, lying on your stiff neck pillow, you reflect. No, you don't have the freedom most people do. You don't have weekends, lazy mornings, or even your real name half the time. But you do have control, quiet, elegant, invisible control, and sometimes that's more powerful than any title or paycheck. As you drift off, the echo of your fan snapping shut plays in your mind like a closing curtain. The days are turning cooler now. Autumn is painting Kyoto in deep reds and burnished golds, and with the change in season comes a new kind of pressure, public performances. Tonight, you're not just entertaining behind sliding doors. You're dancing on stage outdoors, no less at a festival filled with locals, tourists, and the ever-watchful gaze of your own community. Seasonal festivals are sacred in the world of geisha. They're part preservation, part pageantry, and all eyes are on you. It's not just about impressing guests. It's about representing the legacy of your okiya, your district, and centuries of tradition. One misstep could echo through your reputation like a cracked porcelain teacup. You arrive at the venue just after sunset. Lanterns bob in the wind like soft fireflies. The stage is simple, just polished wood beneath a canopy of leaves, but it feels vast. Behind it, an ancient shrine looms, quiet and expectant. You're nervous. Of course you are. You've danced the routine 100 times in private halls. But this is different. Out here, the crowd isn't trained to watch with restraint. They gasp. They whisper. They point. And somewhere out there, someone is already uploading a photo of you to social media with the wrong caption, "Real-life geisha girl. Pretty." You sigh inwardly. Historians still argue whether modern public performances preserve the authenticity of geisha culture or dilute it for show. Some say these events educate the world. Others claim they're curated illusions for cameras and cash. You don't have the luxury to decide. You just have to dance. The music begins soft, ancient, otherworldly. The shamisen twang cuts through the murmurs. You step into the spotlight. Your sleeves ripple, your feet glide, and your heart, despite all its pounding, remains hidden behind a serene expression. Every gesture you make must tell a story. The passing of time, the ache of love, the loneliness of a falling leaf. You stretch your hand outward, not in yearning, but in quiet farewell. Your eyes remain low. You are not the character in the tale, you are the tale. Someone in the front row sneezes. You do not flinch. Your fan opens with a practiced flick, releasing a soft rustle like a bird unfolding its wings. You spin slowly, letting the silk of your kimono arc behind you like a second dancer. For a moment, time slows. You are not a girl. You are autumn itself. And then it ends. A brief silence follows. Then polite applause. A few tourists cheer. A child claps too loudly. But in your chest, something settles. You didn't falter. Backstage, the house mother nods at you. A rare gesture of approval. You bow in return, your lungs finally exhaling all the breath they've hoarded since the first step. After the performance, you change out of your formal kimono and into something simpler, a navy-patterned piece that's warm and far more breathable. You sit by a small brazier with other maiko and sip sweetened tea, warming your hands. One of the elders tells a story about the festival decades ago, when a lantern caught fire mid-dance. The dancer kept going, she says, eyes twinkling. Didn't even blink. Was it you, you ask? She smiles. Doesn't answer. Probably. You walk home that night with sore feet, but a lifted spirit. The streets are scattered with fallen leaves. You step around them carefully, out of habit because ruining the hem of your kimono would be tragic. Back at the okiya, you undress slowly, reverently. You hang your kimono with care, smoothing the fabric, aligning the folds. Silk must be treated like memory, delicately, deliberately. Before sleep, you kneel at the small altar in the hallway and light a stick of incense. Not for religion, for rhythm, for routine, for grounding. The smoke curls up like a ribbon. You watch it rise, then retreat to your room, lie on your neck pillow, and stare at the ceiling. You danced in public tonight, not for praise, not for claps, but for the unseen ancestors who once wore these robes, painted these faces, and walked these same echoing streets. You feel them close tonight. The festival is behind you, and with it, a brief wave of praise, photos, and an awkward encounter with a tourist who asked if you lived in a museum. You smiled. Of course, you always smile. But now comes a different challenge, the challenge of stillness, of sustaining the illusion, day after day, without cracking. You are in a season of visibility, which is to say, everyone is watching you. Potential patrons, the house mother, rival okiya, even visiting journalists, scribbling notes for articles that will confuse you with a kabuki actor or worse. And in this season, there is no room for scandal. You eat carefully, you speak precisely, you rehearse the right responses to rude questions. You laugh at jokes you've already heard this week, and you definitely do not admit that sometimes you miss being anonymous. You begin to notice how much of your identity is no longer yours. Your name isn't your real name, it was given to you by the house. Your birthday is rarely celebrated, except quietly, maybe with an extra rice ball or a smile from your oka-san. Your hairstyle is not chosen by you. Your schedule is not yours. Historians still argue whether this careful erasure of individuality was a sacrifice for the sake of the art, or a calculated method of control to protect the industry's brand. Maybe both, maybe neither. You just know that lately you've started looking at yourself in the mirror and wondering which version of you is still beneath the makeup. Today, during practice, you falter. Just slightly. A misstep in a shamisen piece you've played 100 times. Your teacher's eyes narrow. She doesn't scold you, but her silence is heavier than any words. Later, when asked why you seem distracted, you lie and say you're tired, which is true, but also not the reason. There's a story circulating the okiya. Another maiko, not far from your age, was seen in the company of a man, a boyfriend. Nothing scandalous, really. They just talked in public a bit too long. She's been reassigned to domestic duties indefinitely. You file that away in the mental drawer, labeled Lessons You Didn't Ask For. Tonight's engagement is subdued. A small tea gathering with a retired scholar who's more interested in poetry than in people. He asks you about basho. You quote 2 lines. He nods, pleased. You spend the rest of the evening discussing fireflies, falling leaves, and impermanence. It's actually peaceful. You return home early, and for once, you remove your makeup slowly, not because you're tired, but because you want to look at yourself a bit longer. You trace your cheekbones with your fingers, remembering how they looked before powder and lipstick became daily armor. You lie down and wonder, what would happen if you simply stopped? If you chose your own name, wore your hair loose, smiled when you actually found something funny? The thought feels dangerous, but you don't linger on it. Because your life now is not about spontaneity, it's about consistency. You are a symbol, a story, a sigh of elegance walking through an increasingly chaotic world. And symbols, as you've learned, must never misbehave. Tonight, as you sit for hair maintenance, yes, again you wonder who first decided that beauty required such sacrifice. The hairdresser hums softly while inspecting the damage. A few loose strands, a crooked pin, a suspicious dent from when you leaned too long against a shoji screen. Rookie mistake. Your hair has been styled in the traditional Weishinobu bun for over a week now. It's adorned with layers of combs and kanzashi pins, some decorative, some symbolic. You're not allowed to wash it until the style is redone, which means itchy scalp, sensitive temples, and the deeply humbling experience of sleeping on a wooden neck pillow that may as well be a polite brick. You endure this because you must, because a crooked hairpiece draws whispers, and whispers turn into judgment, and judgment? Well, judgment can undo months of careful progress. The hairdresser finishes, leans back, and says, "You sleep like a wild dog." You blink, then laugh softly. It's the most honest critique you've heard in days. Historians still argue whether the elaborate hair traditions of geisha were status symbols, tools of beauty, or methods of self-discipline. Some believe the discomfort was part of the transformation, that physical restraint cultivated emotional grace. Others suspect it was just plain fashion, stubbornly unyielding to comfort. You think about that as you head into the shared bathhouse after your checkup. You can't let your hair get wet, so you wrap it tightly and wash around it, which is somehow harder than it sounds. You splash warm water onto your neck, onto your arms, scrubbing away the invisible tension of the week. Another Maiko enters the bath and sighs. "Do you ever dream of cutting it all off?" she whispers. You nod. "Every other Tuesday." You both laugh. Quietly, of course. The walls echo. After the bath, you prepare for sleep. And by sleep, of course, you mean the act of lying motionless on that delightful neck block while trying not to crush the carefully lacquered mountain on your skull. You adjust your head, inch by inch, until your spine gives up trying to negotiate and simply accepts its fate. Your room is dim. A paper lantern flickers in the hallway. You stare at the ceiling and think not of tonight's guests or tomorrow's schedule, but of the simple fantasy of letting your hair down, literally and metaphorically. You imagine what it would feel like to run, barefoot, hair unbound, no sleeves trailing behind you, like parachutes of expectation. You imagine laughing loudly, chewing your rice without grace, making eye contact without thinking about your fan angle. But then, the moment passes. Because a geisha doesn't run, she glides. She doesn't speak too loudly, she reflects. She doesn't complain about discomfort. She embodies grace, even when every vertebra is filing a protest. Still, you whisper to yourself, as your eyes begin to close, one day, you don't know if it's a promise or a rebellion. You just know that in the silent, painted world you live in, dreams are the only place where your hair flows free. You wake up with a stiff neck and a growing sense of unease. Today is that day. The day every Maiko hears about in whispers before she even learns to tie her own obi. The day of the mizuage ceremony. You're not alone. Other Maiko in your okiya have gone through it before. They don't speak of it directly, but they leave behind clues, subtle shifts in attitude, longer silences, a maturity that sits behind the eyes like old smoke. Today, it's your turn to step across a threshold that no one fully explains. Your Okasan sits you down in the front room, her face unreadable. She tells you how beautiful your hair looks. She brushes a speck of lint from your collar. Then, almost offhandedly, she says, "The patron has been chosen." You nod. You've been trained to nod, even when your stomach coils like a tightening obi. For outsiders, mizuage is one of the most debated rituals in geisha history. Historians still argue whether it was symbolic, transactional, ceremonial, or something else entirely. Some records describe it as a coming-of-age event like a debutante ball wrapped in silk and tea. Others describe darker things, veiled contracts, whispered arrangements, and the silent price of rising through the ranks. Officially, in modern geisha culture, The mizuage is nothing more than a name for your graduation from maiko to geiko. It marks your transformation from apprentice to artist. There's a party, a new hairstyle, a new level of autonomy. Unofficially, well, the past lingers. Today, your kimono is different. Redder, heavier. You wear the ofuku hairstyle now, more subdued than the childish fanfare of the maiko. The bells in your kanzashi are gone. Your sleeves are shorter, you look older, less mythical, more human, but no less mysterious. The patron who supported your journey, the one who helped pay off your debts, who booked you consistently, who sent discreet gifts, is in attendance. He doesn't speak to you directly, he doesn't have to. His presence is the loudest voice in the room. You perform your final maiko dance. It's slower than usual, deliberately restrained, like drawing a curtain shut. The room is filled with other geiko, house mothers, even a few reporters pretending not to take notes. You're gifted an ivory fan with your new name inscribed in gold. Not your real name, your geiko name, the one you'll use for the rest of your professional life. You bow, you thank them all. And inside, you wonder if this is a promotion or a surrender. Back at the okiya, there's a quiet celebration. The other maiko look at you differently now. One offers you her spot near the brazier without speaking. Another adjusts your collar for you, carefully. You've crossed a line they haven't yet reached. Your okasan offers a rare toast with plum wine. From today, she says, you carry your own legacy. You sip. It tastes bittersweet, like the season itself. Later that night, you sit before the mirror in your new kimono, face bare. You trace your reflection, observing what's changed. Not much, and everything. You're no longer in training. You're no longer in debt to your house. You now pay a portion of your earnings back to the okiya, but the freedom on paper is real. You're a geiko now. But the role hasn't changed. You still serve, still dance, still smile, still maintain the perfect illusion. The only difference is, now the illusion is entirely yours to uphold. You lie on your neck pillow, hair in its new style, fan resting beside you, and feel something settle into place. Not peace, not pride, something quieter, like a key turning in a door. The autumn chill is settling deeper into the Kyoto nights, and along with it comes a strange new energy. Foreigners. They arrive in groups, with cameras around their necks and guidebooks worn to soft curls. They whisper excitedly when they see you on the street, eyes wide, like they've spotted a rare animal. You've grown used to it the way they fumble with phrases like real geisha or authentic experience, as if you were a museum exhibit that somehow wandered out of its case. You don't blame them, not entirely. Western fascination with geisha has always been tangled up in misunderstanding. Movies, books, and glossy travel magazines have built an image that's part fantasy, part confusion. And now, here you are, walking past them in full regalia, silent, poised, and apparently photo-worthy. One young tourist approaches as you glide through Gion. "Excuse me," she says. "Are you allowed to talk?" You stop. Tilt your head just slightly. Smile behind your fan. She gasps, like you've just recited a haiku. Her friends snap photos. You don't say a word, because sometimes silence is the better answer. Historians still debate whether the geisha's mystique was a deliberate strategy or an accidental byproduct of isolationism and romanticized storytelling. Some say it was cultivated carefully to protect the craft. Others suggest it happened when Western observers filtered centuries of tradition through their own cultural lens and misread everything. One particularly bold tourist once asked you if you sing karaoke with sumo wrestlers on weekends. You manage not to laugh, which honestly deserves an award. More recently, tour companies have started offering geisha experiences, where customers dress up in kimono, get white makeup slapped on their faces, and pose under cherry blossoms while sipping canned green tea. It's called henshin, transformation. You watch these photo shoots sometimes, hidden behind a wooden pillar or shop curtain. The girls laugh. They twirl. They mimic poses they've seen online. It's cute in a way, but also a bit like watching someone wear your identity as a costume. A fellow geiko once muttered, "They dress up for an afternoon, we live it for a lifetime." You nodded, then added, "And we do it without Instagram filters." Still, not all the attention is shallow. Some guests come with reverence in their eyes. They ask careful questions. They watch your performances with a stillness that feels like respect. One elderly European woman even wrote you a thank you note in calligraphy, flawed but heartfelt. And honestly, that meant something. But the influx of tourism has changed things. You now have to navigate more than just the traditional expectations. You dodge street photographers. You correct magazine interviews. You perform at fusion-style events where shamisen is mixed with jazz. Once, you were asked to pour sake at a fashion designer's after-party, held in a former warehouse decorated like a faux tea house. You wore your best kimono. You stood beside a glowing bar. You smiled while a DJ remixed koto music into club beats. It was surreal. You've had to adapt. You've learned to say, "No pictures, please," in 5 languages. You've gotten good at walking fast in Okubo. You know how to disappear behind a corner if someone gets too bold with a camera. But sometimes, in the quiet of your okiya, you wonder, will anyone ever truly understand what you do? Will they know how much practice goes into the tilt of your wrist? The hours spent perfecting a single bow? The pain you ignore to maintain the elegance they marvel at? Maybe not. But you continue anyway, because your work isn't about being seen. It's about embodying grace, discipline, artistry, even when no one's looking, especially then. As you slip off your kimono tonight and fold it precisely into its cedar-lined drawer, you imagine someone, decades from now, stumbling across your name in an old program or dusty photo. They'll probably say, "Ah, a real geisha," and you hope they understand that being real is the hardest part. Tonight, you lie on your futon, listening to a sound you've come to dread, distant, muffled booms. They aren't fireworks. They aren't celebratory drums. They're air raid sirens. Kyoto hasn't been bombed yet, but the tension is mounting. Japan is deep into war, and even the quiet elegance of Gion cannot keep the world at bay. The streets are darker now, the guests fewer. The conversation has shifted from poetry to politics, from moonlight to military losses, and your world, the ornate, precise, floating world of the geiko, is beginning to tremble. You wake early and light incense, not for ritual, but for reassurance. The house mother reads the news quietly in the kitchen, lips pursed. One of the senior geiko has a brother who was drafted. Another has lost 2 clients in the last month, officers who used to attend banquets before they vanished into silence. The ochaya are quieter too. Guests now pay in ration coupons or not at all. Sake is harder to come by. Silk is being redirected for parachutes, and rumors swirl that kimono dyeing may soon be restricted. Your performances continue, though they are fewer now. Tonight, you dance for a group of officers on leave. They're tired, too young, and strangely quiet. You sense that what they want is not entertainment, but remembrance, something that reminds them of peace, of beauty, of a life not shaped by boots and barbed wire. So you dance. You don't think about perfection. You don't think about toe placement or sleeve angles. You just move, slowly, softly, as if your very presence could lull the world into calm. Historians still debate the role of geisha during wartime. Some say they were morale boosters, distractions sent in to soften the hard edge of soldier life. Others insist they were cultural anchors preserving Japanese identity when everything else was being rewritten in smoke and blood. You simply tried to stay afloat. Your shamisen teacher was drafted last month. His replacement is older, gentler, and plays slower than you're used to. But his music has weight. When you rehearse with him, you notice your movements growing quieter, more contemplative. It's like dancing in prayer. At night, blackout curtains cover every window. The lanterns stay dim. You're no longer allowed to walk home alone after dark. Even the sound of your okobo feels too loud now. Rations have changed your diet. You now eat plain rice with pickled radish, maybe miso broth if you're lucky. The kitchen is eerily quiet these days, like it's afraid to make noise. One evening, a guest cancels last minute. Not because of illness or work, but because he's gone. Just gone. You don't ask questions. The Oka-san simply folds his name card in half and puts it away. You realize how fragile your world is. All the rituals, the bows, the layered symbolism, it can vanish overnight. Still, you go on. You press your kimono with care. You apply your makeup like armor. You bow deeply, laugh softly, pour tea with steady hands. Because sometimes, the smallest gestures of grace are the only resistance left. You find new meaning in the smallest acts. Folding a fan, lighting a candle, humming a folk song from your childhood. Even sharing a rice ball becomes something sacred. One night, during a power outage, the house mother lights a single candle in the hallway. The flame flickers. You and the other geisha gather around it, dressed in sleeping robes, hair wrapped to protect it from the cold. You sip hot water and talk quietly about nothing, weather, plum blossoms, the price of hair oil. It feels like a dream, or a memory that hasn't happened yet. You lie awake later, watching the shadow of your fan on the wall. You wonder what kind of world will remain after the sirens stop, and whether your art, your name, your floating world will remain with it. The war ends not with a parade, but with a strange silence. No more sirens, no more newspaper lists of the dead, just quiet. The kind that lingers too long, like a guest who doesn't know when to leave. You hear it in the streets of Gion. You feel it in the Okia. Something is over, but nothing feels truly ended. Kyoto is spared the worst of the destruction, but it is not untouched. Many Ochaya have shuttered. Some geisha have disappeared, their paths redirected by marriage, poverty, or grief. A few never returned from the rural evacuations. Their names are still whispered at the back of tea houses, half elegy, half rumor. And now, the world begins to creep back in, but it doesn't return the way it left. Everything has changed, including you. The guests who return aren't the same. Some wear Western suits instead of traditional kimono. Some speak halting English words picked up from soldiers or radios. Others simply don't return at all. And among those who do, there's a hunger not just for food, but for meaning, for connection, for the comfort of something familiar, wrapped in silk and silence. And so, you begin again. But not from the beginning. You're older now, a full geisha, with years of experience hidden beneath your sleeves. The debt is paid. The mask fits better. The performance, it's subtler, sharper. You know how to read a room within moments. You know which joke will soften a tense table, which compliment will disarm a weary guest, which silence speaks louder than words. Your style shifts, too. The dances are slower now, more deliberate. The music carries sorrow like a thin thread woven into each note. Even the tea you pour feels more precious. Because now, everything is about what was almost lost. Historians still argue whether the post-war geisha were relics clinging to a vanished past, or cultural survivors who adapted in silence. Some say the art faded in relevance. Others insist it deepened, becoming a refuge from a world that suddenly spun far too fast. You lean toward the latter. One day, a photographer comes to the Okia. She's Japanese, modern, with short hair and sharp eyes. She wants to capture the spirit of Kyoto women. You're chosen as the subject for one of the portraits. You sit by the garden gate, dressed in a muted kimono with minimal embroidery, still elegant, but more restrained than the flashy Maiko style of your youth. You hold a fan in your lap. You don't pose. You just are. The shutter clicks. Again and again. Later, she shows you the image. You barely recognize yourself. There's strength in your posture, tiredness in your eyes, a softness at the edge of your mouth. No drama, no performance, just presence. She asks if you like it. You nod, quietly. That night, you think about what's next. You're no longer the young apprentice with trembling fingers. You're not the girl who cried during her first tea ceremony. You're something else now, wiser, quieter, still bound by tradition, but not trapped by it. You begin mentoring younger Maiko. You teach them how to hold a fan, how to walk, how to survive politely. You watch them make the same mistakes you did rushing a bow, laughing too loud, blinking during a still pose. You don't scold. You correct gently. You tell stories. You guide. Because now, you are part of the legacy. At dinner, one of the younger girls whispers, "I want to be like you." You smile. Then you correct her posture. Later that evening, as you fold your kimono and place it back into its cedar box, you catch sight of your reflection in the lacquered mirror. There's a new grace there, one not painted on with white powder or stitched into silk. It's earned. The war may have taken much, but it also returns something: clarity. You survived. Your art survived. And now, with every step you take down the lantern-lit alleys of Kyoto, you carry the weight and the beauty of everything that remained. Time moves differently now. Your life is no longer a cycle of constant firsts: first dance, first performance, first compliment from a patron. Instead, you live in the rhythm of repetition. Not boring repetition, but sacred. Ritual. Each evening is a verse in a poem you've memorized by heart, yet still feel deeply every time you speak it. But something else has shifted. You are getting older. Not old, not yet. But in geisha years, you're entering a new season, the quiet one, the one where the younger Maiko now laugh too loud in the corridors and need reminders to smooth their sleeves. You watch them sometimes, a soft smile at your lips. You remember being them, nervous, determined, exhausted, and exhilarated. But your time, as the center of attention, it's beginning to fade. Your patrons now are the older ones, the ones who value conversation over flirtation. They ask you questions about art, about the changing city, about memory. You no longer have to perform as much. Sometimes, your presence alone is enough. And truthfully, it's freeing. You wear simpler kimono now, earth tones, understated patterns, no longer the firework silks of youth. Your hair ornaments are fewer, your makeup lighter. You walk a little slower. But the grace? It lingers, deeper now, not in your body, but in your presence. Historians still debate the status of aging geisha. Some say they faded into obscurity. Others believe they became living treasures, repositories of knowledge and quiet dignity. The reality, as usual, is both. Some vanish, some shine brighter, and some become teachers without ever saying they are. You begin receiving invitations not just to perform, but to speak, to share stories. A university professor asks if you'll guest lecture for a class on intangible cultural heritage. You agree, amused. You tell them about your first shamisen lesson, about how your hand cramped from nervousness. The students are wide-eyed, scribbling notes as if you're a rare book. Afterward, one approaches you quietly and says, "I always thought geisha were just entertainers. I had no idea you were artists." You nod. Sometimes we forget too. At the Okiya, your role has changed as well. You're no longer expected to attend every banquet. You now help manage the schedule. You review bookings, vet clients, and guide young Maiko through the maze of expectations with a wisdom born not from manuals, but from mistakes. You pass down secrets, not found in any textbook. How to pause a conversation with a sip of tea to regain control. How to bow when someone insults you in front of others. How to leave a room more quietly than a sigh. Your teachings aren't loud. They're woven into gestures, into examples. One Maiko says, "I want to learn to walk like you." You laugh. Then you make her walk the same 5 steps 30 times until she finds her balance. At night, you no longer stare at the ceiling in doubt. You stare at it with a calm, weighty peace. You've danced through decades, through war, through tourists, through misunderstandings. And still, you are here. The world has changed. Yes, the economy, the role of women, the expectation of beauty. But within these paper walls and cedar floors, something eternal lingers, an energy passed hand to hand, foot to foot, bow to bow. And you are part of it now. Not just a performer, not just a guest in a silk costume, but a keeper of something older than applause. Tonight, you stand in the dressing room longer than usual. Your kimono hangs on its rack, untouched. The house mother waits in the doorway, watching quietly, not rushing you. She knows what this night means. You've made a decision. One that most geiko must eventually make, though no one tells you when it's time. There's no official announcement, no ceremony. Just a quiet evening when your hands rest too long on folded silk, and you realize you're ready to stop wearing it. Retirement in the world of geisha isn't dramatic. There's no press release, no farewell tour, just a slow unspooling of performances, fewer bookings, more time at home. For some, it happens quickly. For others, it takes years. For you, it's now. You've danced enough, poured enough tea. tilted your head just so for so many conversations that your neck carries an entire archive of nods. You take the kimono down anyway. You dress one last time, slowly, deliberately. Every layer feels like a memory sliding back into place. The weight of the obi across your waist, the tug of the collar against your neck, the gentle brush of the silk sleeves across your wrists. It's like a final conversation with an old friend. Historians still argue about what happens to geisha after they retire. Some say they fade into obscurity. Others insist they become secret legends, quietly mentoring, passing on wisdom behind the scenes. There's even a theory, half romantic, half ridiculous, that some never retire at all. They simply become part of Kyoto's fabric, like a scent or a shadow. Tonight, you are performing not at an ochiya, but at a small private event, a gathering of friends, former patrons, and a few fellow geiko who know this is your last public appearance. The room is warm, intimate. The air smells like plum wine and cedar. You play a short piece on the shamisen, your fingers slower now, but still sure. You recite a seasonal poem. You dance a final time. Not your most technically perfect performance, but your most honest. There's a hush after you finish, a long one. Then, applause. Gentle, respectful, and a few tears. You bow, deeper than usual. Then you bow again, not just to the guests, but to the art itself, to everything it gave you, and everything it quietly asked you to let go. Afterward, someone asks if you're really done. You smile. From the stage, yes, but not from the story. Oh, and that's the truth. You may no longer wear the makeup, but your voice still carries its shape. Your steps, even in simple sandals, still follow the old rhythm. And your presence without fan, without sleeve, without smoke or flute, still speaks of all the things you've lived. Back at the okiya, the younger Maiko wait for you. They offer you tea, and one presents you with a small pouch of folded paper cranes. For your next season, she whispers. You reach out, steady her hands, and say, "It will be yours now." That night, you fold your final formal kimono and place it in its box. The cedar scent wraps around you like memory. You close the lid gently. Then, for the first time in decades, you let your hair down. All of it. No ornaments, no wax. Just soft strands falling like evening rain down your back. You stare in the mirror. It's still you. Not the geiko, not the mask, just you. And she's been waiting a long time to meet you again. You wake up the next morning without an alarm, without a performance to prepare for, and most surprising of all, without the usual tightness in your spine from sleeping on a lacquered neck pillow. Because last night, for the first time in years, you slept with your head on a real pillow. A soft one that didn't demand stillness or obedience. And your hair? A little tangled, a little wild, but free. You sit up slowly, blinking in the soft morning light. The okiya is quieter than usual. Perhaps the house mother let you sleep longer as a quiet act of grace. Or perhaps the girls are being especially respectful, knowing the transition you're making. The boundary between geiko and former geiko is thin, invisible, but profound. You rise and shuffle across the tatami, not in silence this time, but with the soft, natural noises of someone living a life without performance. You stretch, you yawn, you crack your back. No one is watching, and for once, you don't have to care. You make yourself tea, not as part of a ritual, not as a performance, but simply because you want something warm. You sit by the garden window and sip it slowly. The garden hasn't changed. Same crooked pine, same little pond, same seasonal blooms. But you have. You're seeing it now, not as a backdrop to a life, but as a life, present and pulsing. A young Maiko passes through the hallway, sees you, and bows deeply. You wave her off gently, motioning for her to sit. She hesitates. You nod. She joins you. The two of you sit in silence, sipping tea. She's nervous, you remember that kind of silence well, the kind that hides questions behind its eyes. Finally, she asks, "What do I do when I forget who I'm supposed to be?" You smile. Then stop. Just be quiet for a moment. Let her return to you. She looks confused at first, but you can see the seed take root. She nods. You don't elaborate. In this world, wisdom is better offered, like incense, subtle, slow to unfold, lingering long after the smoke disappears. Historians still debate how much of geisha training is about becoming someone versus erasing who you once were. Some argue it's both, that in learning to become an image, a performer, a keeper of grace, you end up letting go of the parts that once made you loud, curious, messy. And in retirement, if you're lucky, some of those parts come back. You now walk Kyoto's streets without your kimono, in simple clothing, hair tied back loosely. Tourists no longer stop you. They walk right past. You are invisible again, but not erased. And there's freedom in that. One afternoon, you sit in a small tear room with an old patron, not a client anymore, just a friend. You talk about aging and poetry and how the city feels smaller now. He asks, "Do you miss it?" You pause, then nod. "I miss the silence, the attention to detail, the smell of freshly pressed silk." But you sip your tea. "I don't miss being watched." He smiles. "Then you've graduated twice." You laugh out loud, not behind a fan. That evening, you write your real name for the first time in years, just a single stroke on clean paper. It feels both foreign and familiar. You place the paper in your drawer, beside your folded obi, like a bookmark for this new chapter. You're not quite sure what this next part of life holds. Maybe you'll open a tea shop. Maybe you'll mentor in a more official capacity. Maybe you'll finally take that trip to the countryside you've postponed for years. But for now, you have your breath, your tea, your name, and that is enough. You begin to notice the quiet things more now. The chirp of cicadas layered beneath the distant rhythm of footsteps on stone, the way the wind moves the lanterns just before dusk, the softness of cotton robes compared to the weight of brocade. Your life is slower, but somehow richer, like a poem read aloud for the third time, each word finally sinking in. Retirement hasn't removed you from the world of geisha, it's simply changed your relationship to it. You are still of the world, but no longer in its spotlight. You've become something quieter, a keeper of memory. Sometimes you still visit the Ochaya, not to perform, but to observe. You sit in the back of the room, sipping tea, listening to the chatter, the music, the stories. When you catch a younger geiko slipping out of rhythm, you don't say anything. You just raise an eyebrow. She adjusts. You smile. You've become the woman you once feared. The quiet mentor, whose opinion isn't spoken loudly, but whose glance carries centuries. And with your new freedom comes another strange phenomenon. Visitors. People now seek you out, not as a performer, as a storyteller, a witness, a human archive. One day, a young writer shows up at your doorstep. She's nervous, clutching a notebook, wearing a pair of sneakers too bright for Kyoto's soft streets. She wants to write about the geisha world. The real one, she says, not the one in the movies. You offer her tea. You sit across from her and ask, "Why do you want to know?" She fidgets, then says, "Because it feels like a secret the world's forgotten how to keep." You tilt your head. "Some secrets aren't meant to be kept," you reply, "just shared carefully." So you tell her a few stories, not all, just enough to make her eyes widen. About the night a fan broke mid-dance, and you turned it into part of the performance. About the time you translated a businessman's guilt into laughter with a single look. About the difference between a guest who respects you and one who thinks you're a souvenir. Historians still argue whether the modern geisha is a revival, a shadow, or an evolution. Some claim the essence was lost with the arrival of electricity, jazz, and cameras. Others say it lives on, quieter but deeper, like a river that flows underground. You've come to see it differently. The geisha world has never been static. It adapts, it bends, but it never breaks. Because it's not about the makeup, or the music, or even the dance. It's about attention. Attention to others. Attention to the moment. Attention to beauty, not loud beauty, but precise beauty. Intentional, fleeting, and deeply human. You share this with the writer. She nods, scribbling furiously. She thanks you, bowing deeply. You walk her to the door and tell her gently, "Write the truth, but let it breathe." That night, you pull out your old fan, the one with the silver maple leaves. You open it slowly. The edges are soft now, the folds loose. You wave it gently through the air, as if stirring old stories from the corners of the room. And you remember, not just the grand performances, but the little things. The smell of fresh tatami in summer, the nervous laughter before your debut, the way the light caught the edge of a tea bowl, the feeling, just once, of dancing so freely you forgot who was watching. You close the fan, set it on the table. Then, with a deep breath, you step out into the garden, not as a geisha, not as a mentor, not as a guest, just as yourself. And in the quiet of the Kyoto evening, with the crickets singing and the lanterns flickering low, that feels like enough. There's a new term you've heard floating through the tea houses lately, tourist geisha. It stings a little, but you understand. The world is changing faster than ever. Everything is documented, commodified, filtered. You walk through Gion and see young women in rented kimono, their faces painted white for a day, laughing as they try to pose with perfect elegance for 100 eager cameras. Sometimes, tourists mistake them for real geiko. Sometimes, they mistake you for just another tourist, now that you walk without the formal attire. The lines are blurred. The story is confused. One afternoon, a visitor stops you as you stroll along the Shirakawa Canal. "Are you a real geisha?" she asks. A little breathless, a little too loud. You smile. "Once, yes, but now I'm just me." She looks disappointed, as if you've failed to perform on cue. You wish her a good day and keep walking, letting the sound of water and wind carry the awkward moment away. Back at the Okia, you find yourself in conversation with the house mother. She's older now, but sharp as ever. She sighs about the Instagram girls and the companies who sell authentic geisha experiences as if you could buy a lifetime of discipline with a credit card. Historians still debate whether this blurring of tradition is harmless fun or a slow erasure of meaning. Some say the new faces keep the legacy alive, even if imperfectly. Others lament that imitation, however well meant, risks turning the art into a caricature. You have your own theory. Culture changes, whether you like it or not. The difference is whether you choose to become bitter or to quietly teach what's real to those who are ready. Sometimes, you're invited to modern events, fashion shows, art openings, even television interviews. Organizers ask you to wear your kimono again, to be a geisha for an evening. Sometimes you accept, sometimes you decline. You decide, now. That's the freedom of no longer being bound by the old contracts. The Maiko and Geiko you mentor struggle with these changes. Some feel threatened, some are excited, some just want to keep dancing, no matter what the world thinks. One evening, you sit with them in the back room, discussing a new performance piece that mixes traditional dance with contemporary music. There's a debate. Is it sacrilege, or is it evolution? You listen. You share your stories. You remind them that once, not so long ago, even the shamisen was considered dangerously modern. Everything old was new once, you say, smiling. Afterward, you walk home alone, past neon lights and smartphone flashes. You think about the difference between imitation and embodiment, between wearing a costume and living a craft. You remember how, at the height of your career, you could feel the energy in a room shift just by how you held your fan. That's what you hope survives. You pause on a quiet bridge, watching the lanterns float downstream, reflected in the black water. The city feels ancient and brand new, all at once. A group of tourists laughs behind you, snapping selfies. You don't mind, because you know the real thing when you see it. And, quietly, you trust that a few others will too. You head home, at peace with the blur. The role you played, the art you preserved, the world you now watch with a gentle, forgiving eye. You're older now, old enough that people sometimes lower their voices when they speak to you, as if reverence were the only way to address a living memory. You don't mind. It's easier than the noise and hurry of your earlier years. These days, you find yourself thinking more about legacy. Not fame or glory, or your name written in some dusty registry, but the quiet impact of rituals repeated so often they seep into the bones of a place. The way a certain fold in a kimono lives on in the fingers of someone you once taught. The silent rhythm of a bow, the arch of a wrist, the pause before a smile. One morning, you're invited to watch the annual debut of a new Maiko. She is impossibly young, her eyes wide, her voice still trembling under the weight of tradition and expectation. She bows so low her forehead nearly brushes the tatami. You remember what that felt like, the fear, the hope, the dizzying sense of stepping out onto a stage that began long before you ever arrived. You watch her dance, the movements familiar, yet fresh. The audience, mostly locals, watches with polite interest. But you see the house mother's hands twisting her sleeve, the pride and anxiety etched into every gesture. You know exactly how many hours of practice, of tears, of silent repetition are behind each perfect turn. Afterward, the Maiko is brought to you. She bows deeply. You nod and tell her, "Your dance was beautiful." She blushes, thanks you, and slips away. But her eyes linger, as if searching for something in your face, permission perhaps, or reassurance that this ancient path still matters. Historians still debate what truly remains when tradition is passed on. Is it just the choreography, the visible steps? Or is it the unseen discipline, resilience, the deep inner calm forged by thousands of silent mornings? You believe it's the latter. At the Okiya, you spend more time in the back rooms now, helping with the laundry, repairing kimono, tending the small altar where incense burns for departed sisters. Sometimes, you're asked to speak at schools or community gatherings. Children giggle at your stories of crooked wigs and runaway hairpins. Adults listen more quietly, hoping to catch some secret for themselves. On quiet afternoons, you walk Kyoto's less traveled lanes. The city has changed, but its heart remains stone, water, paper, shadow. You run your fingers along the rails of a bridge, remembering laughter from years ago, then keep walking. You've become, in your own way, part of the city's landscape. Not as a famous figure, but as a gentle ripple in the stream. A nod to the past, a hand reaching softly into the future. And in this space, neither center stage nor completely gone, you find a comfort you never expected. You are living proof that traditions don't end. They drift, they settle, they become the fabric of places and of people in ways that outlast any headline or fleeting trend. You are not remembered for applause, but for the quiet echo of your presence. The days pass more gently now, each one blending into the next, like the fading colors of an evening sky. Your world has become softer, less about performance, more about presence. There's no need to impress, no audience to please. You wake, move, and breathe at your own pace. You notice that even your memories have slowed. You recall them not as a stream of dramatic moments, but as a collection of details. The feel of silk against your skin, the weight of a hairpin, the sound of rain on paper screens, the hush that falls over a room just before a performance begins. Sometimes, you find yourself drifting into reverie, a dance step remembered here, a snatch of shamisen music there. You hum quietly as you mend a hem or prepare a cup of tea, letting the past and present intermingle. The discipline never truly leaves you. It just becomes less rigid, more like second nature. One morning, a group of schoolchildren comes to tour the Okiya. Their teacher bows, explains who you are, and they all gasp. You laugh and show them how to fold a simple origami crane. They ask you if it's true that Geisha used to dance for the emperor. You wink and say, "We danced for everyone who needed a little beauty in their lives." They nod, satisfied, not caring whether it's true or just a good story. Later that evening, as the city outside quiets and lanterns flicker on, you prepare incense for the household altar. You kneel, strike a match, and watch the tiny flame blossom and fade. The smoke curls upward, tracing invisible patterns, carrying prayers for sisters long gone, for seasons past, for the quiet joys still to come. Historians still debate whether the geisha tradition is fading or simply evolving. Some worry it will be forgotten. But as you sit there, surrounded by the ordinary magic of an old house and the echoes of every step you ever danced, you know the answer. What you've lived will remain, not because of books or photos or even memory, but because of the way you've lived it fully, gently, and with quiet intention. It will echo on, in gestures and laughter, in the silence between notes, in the next Maiko's careful bow. The lanterns outside sway in the evening breeze. The city hums softly. And you, content at last, let yourself drift towards sleep, grateful for every moment, beautiful, boring, and utterly your own. The story slows now, the city's lanterns flickering low as Kyoto settles into its nightly hush. You can almost hear the gentle sweep of a sleeve, the soft sigh of wind over ancient rooftops, the distant clack of okubo echoing down empty alleys. Each sound is softer, each breath longer. You let your shoulders loosen, let your mind become weightless, floating on memories like petals on a quiet stream. In the dimness, you picture the old Okia walls lined with silk and laughter, the scent of incense curling through the evening air. Even as the details blur, you hold on to the feeling of belonging, of grace, of having played your part in a story much bigger than yourself. You recall the peace of rituals performed in silence, the warmth of a teacup in your palms, the certainty that beauty, no matter how fleeting, always returns in some gentle form. You allow the noise of the day to drift away now. The world narrows to the faint whisper of night breezes and the slow, even rhythm of your breath. You know you are safe, that your story, woven from so many careful gestures, has already settled softly into the fabric of the city, of time, of memory. So close your eyes. Let the lantern light fade behind your lids. Trust that the river of tradition you stepped into will keep flowing, carrying both you and all who come after. There is nothing more to do, nowhere else to be. Only this calm, drifting present, and the slow, sweet welcome of sleep. Good night, and sweet dreams.